Guys, this is my first time trying this, so I am gonna hope that it works. If not, we'll figure something else out. I am gonna show you how I edit my beach pictures. My family and I just went to the Gulf of Mexico and had a great time, but I got some, I think, pretty good pictures. I do know that when I'm editing these, I'm really kind of going for it, if you will. They're my pictures, so I don't really care. Some of them probably look unbelievable, and I'm okay with that. I don't really see clients. If I did, I probably wouldn't go this far with my pictures. But since they're for me, I like to kind of just go all the way. So here is a picture of my family. I've not edited this one at all, so you will be doing it with me for the first time. So I'll probably play around a lot. I set the camera up and asked my sister to take this picture. So I will. I really like to play with my skies in the while I'm at the beach. So when I'm taking the picture or setting up the exposure, I do try to make sure that it's not too blown out. With that, I know that I'm going to get underexposed people. And I know that I can just fix that in Lightroom. So the first thing I'm going to do is crop this and make it straight. And then I'm going to probably bring that down just a little bit and maybe over. And we'll do just a straight up centered shot of this picture for no particular reason, but just because I want to. Alrighty. Okay, now I am a huge actions and preset person. So a lot of the stuff I do is straight from actions and presets. I don't know if you consider that good or bad, but it's what I do. For most of these pictures, what I've been using is this Beach Love one from Kate and Lane's presets. It makes it warm and bright and all that good kind of stuff. I do go in and tweak them though. I like what it's done to the water. I do not like what it's done to the skin, made it way too orange. So what I am going to do first, and in all of her presets, she brings her clarity way down, which I like clarity down. I just don't like it down that much. I usually do it around 11. She also is always, well, she usually puts a sharpening. She didn't there. I usually take the sharpening off. I also go into enable profile corrections. There we go. Okay. It just kind of takes a bit of that vignette off and brightens it up a little bit. So that's where I'm going to start with at least. Then I'm going to play around with my white balance. I'll let you know my white balance is the one thing that just really gets me. I have such issues with it and such problems. I'm going to start right there for right now. One of the things that I really am not digging is the skin. And she's upped the saturation on the orange color, and so I am going to go in and decrease the oranges and see what that does to the skin. It's definitely made it look a little bit better. A lot of times too, I will play with the luminance in the orange. So there's with no luminance set on 0 right there. But she had it up to 17. I might bring it up even more. Let me see. So that, again, it's at 42 right now. And that's what it looks like at 0. So I'm going to bring it up some more. Alrighty. Then I'm going to go up to my exposure. This is going to address the exposure on the entire image. and it's at negative 0.75. I'm going to bring it down even further. And as you can see, it really, really decreases the exposure. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a super large brush. I'm hoping you guys can see this so you can see how big, but the inner circle completely surrounds the my entire family. And I'm going to increase exposure with the adjustment brush quite a bit. Alrighty, that's too much, so I'm going to decrease it. Let's see, decrease it some more, and I'm going to stop right there. And then I'll press done. So there's at least, so far before and after, it's getting there. Okay, now here's where my skies come into play. I usually use the gradient tool for my skies. So what I could do, and that's this little thing right here, I'm going to probably bring it down right here and do a little angled gradient. Let me see, I'm going to bring it down just a little bit further down. Bring this, there we go. Okay, so right now the exposure was, oh shoot, let me start all over. Okay. There we go. This one I'm going to delete. Okay, so this one's the one I'm working on right here. The exposure, it says at 1.34. That was what I was working with when I did the brush, and so it's still set to that one. So I'm going to bring it down, and I'm going to also bring the exposure down quite a bit. So as you can see, that brings some of the sky back. I don't know what's going on right here. Don't know. Maybe I'll play with that in a little while. So that gives it a little bit of something or another color. But Desi was asking, how do I get the pinks and the oranges? Here's my trick. Right here, I'm still in the color, using the gradient. Here's the color. I go to select a color, and I just start guessing. So there's kind of a yellowish, kind of like that. If I wanted a pink, I could go over here. And lots of times I will just completely play with all different kinds of colors. And again, this is where I think I might tend to go a little overboard with the skies, using some really bright, vibrant colors. You might want to go a little bit less. But it at least gives you some color. You can even do blue, because I'm doing the beach. I tend to go towards more the pinks and the oranges, but you could do a really vibrant, aqua color sky, or really vibrant, super deep blue sky. I liked over here this orangish color. So I'm going to start with that. You can also here play with the saturation of it. So let's see. I don't like it. That's too red. I'm going to go a little bit more orange. It's too yellow. Alrighty, I like it right about there. And so, and then what I can do too is go here with saturation of the whole gradient. So that's good for right there. Now, sometimes when you use the gradient, if you will look, where this one I used, it went over myself and my husband and my little boy Jackson. If I need to fix that, there are a couple of ways I can do that. Because I decreased exposure, added a color, and up saturation, you can't erase on a gradient, which kind of aggravates me. I wish you could, but you can't. So what I would do is go in, get my exposure brush, bring it down, and so now I'm just going to do the opposite of what that gradient was. And I decreased exposure, so I could increase exposure right there where that gradient went. I'm going to go ahead and just do it on our whole face. I could also add a color. Because I added an orangish color, I could add the opposite, which would be like a bluish color. Obviously, that's way too much, so I could just decrease saturation a little bit. Maybe add just a little bit of a blue, just to and then I could also come back over here and do a little bit less saturation. So that would take care of whatever I had done on this gradient for the sky here on this side of the picture. Another thing, I'm going to delete that exposure brush because I didn't like it. Another thing you could do for the sky, and I'll do it on this side instead of this side, what I would typically do is just do a gradient on this side the exact same way I did this side, but I'm going to just show you something different over here. I'm going to do an exposure brush, make it pretty big, not too big. You want it about the size of whatever the sky is going to be over here. And you would just do the same that you did for the gradient, but instead I'm going to use an exposure brush. The reason the exposure brush works well, especially if you're dealing with people being in the way, is because you can erase exposure brushes. So I'm going to decrease the exposure. I'm going to add a color to it, somewhere around there, the same color that I used the last time. And I'm going to increase saturation. So now I'm just painting it on. So there's that side of the sky. Now, as you can see, I got way too much on my husband, way too much on baby girl. So I'm going to make the exposure brush smaller, and I'm going to go into erase right here. And I'm just going to erase it off of him and her. Lots of times erase can cause a halo, which that's one of the things I'm not fond of with the exposure brush. So you would just have to be really careful trying to do that. That's why I tend to like gradients with the skies, because when you're trying to erase off the people, it just, as you can see, it's creating that exposure. I mean, that halo. Let me just show you how. Let me see. So do you see where the halo is really prominent? So I'm going to delete the exposure brush and do a gradient instead, because it just doesn't create that halo that I'm not a huge fan of. So, and you can play with the angle. You just got to move your mouse around. The middle line helps you play with the angle of the gradient. This one brings it down. See, I could bring it all the way down across the picture. Don't want to though, so I'm going to bring it back up. Alrighty. So there's that. So there is at least the beginning of some sky. I might even, because it was at an angle, we missed this part right here at the very, very top. Bring it down some. And then I'm going to, instead of decreasing exposure so much. There we go. And I'm going to bring this color down a little. So there's a bit of an orange sky showing through. Sometimes what's fun is to get an exposure brush and to get a completely different color. So now I could maybe choose pink here and just kind of bring in some pink tones. I mean, that's obviously way too much. And this is a brush that I'm having to use. So I'm going to decrease that a lot. See, my computer is very slow, so it's just bringing in a little bit of pinkish. I am going to erase what got on me, my boy, right there. So there's just a bit of the beginnings of a sky. Let's see here. So it's okay so far. Alrighty. Now, I've got to go in and increase the exposure on us. We're way too dark for my liking. So that's where, and if you'll see, I'm not being super, sometimes I hear people have such issues with the brush tool. Like, I use the brush tool so much in Lightroom. So much. So see, that's increased, that's looking a lot better. I'm going to go even more. And I like really bright pictures. Again, maybe a little too bright for some of y'all's liking. But that's just me. So there's that. My oldest boy got sunburned. So what I could do with his skin tone is I've zoomed in a lot and just taking some time. There we go. I could, again, this is another exposure brush. I'm going to decrease saturation where he's really red. So that looks better. That's way too much. I'm going to do it at about a negative 11. Okay, so far, let's see here. I'm a fanatic for doing before and afters, like too much. Before, after, before, after, before, after. In Lightroom too, if I want to check my numbers to make sure that I haven't gone too bright, like my face is looking very bright compared to everything else, I just make sure and I just move my cursor along my face, and I'm looking for in the histogram under here. I'm looking at the R number, the red, and I'm just looking to make sure that it's not over 90%. If it's over 90%, lots of times it's going to end up being blown in Photoshop. So I just look for that really quick. Another great way to play with the skies is to go down here to your colors. I love playing with my colors down here. So orange is one I tend to play with very often because it affects skin. And so I've, again, increased luminance quite a bit. I've decreased saturation because we were a little too orange. Now, understand, because the sky is orange, it's also been affected. And if I wanted to play with saturation on the sky in the color, it's going to affect the skin. But because there is some pinks in there, and there are lots of pinks in the picture, this might not work. But I'm going to go to magenta and just see. And I'm going to increase saturation and see what it does to the sky. And then do anything. Except, yeah. So that didn't work. I'm going to go to the purples and see. Lots of times it's just a matter of me playing. It affected his shirt, my Jackson shirt, more so than anything else. So that's not going to work. So I'm not going to be able to play with the color of the sky without it affecting the other parts of the picture. But one thing I do with my beach pictures is I do play with the water a lot too. The place where we went is known for its water and sand. It's called the Emerald Coast, but I like to try to make it a little bit more emerald. The action or the preset that I used already did that, but if I wanted to, I could maybe play with it a little bit more. I want to go to the greens. One way that it helped the preset was it's already decreased the green luminance by negative 58. I'm going to add a little bit of saturation, see what that does. It saturated it up, so it might be a little too much. Let's see. There we go. So, I still don't know what's going on here. Y'all see that? I have noticed that sometimes when you play with the skies like this, it just does something wonky to it. Another thing that I've done with the skies is, and I could go back to the gradients, is I will increase clarity of the, to bring out the clouds. So see that brought out the clouds a little bit right there. Let's see what this does. And this, and again, I'm just going back and playing with the gradients. So it just brings out the clouds a little bit. So I would probably stop here in Lightroom. I would be happy with that. I do realize there's still a lot of magenta in our faces. I could probably continue to fix that a little bit in the oranges and bring down some saturation some more. But I am going to stop right there in Lightroom. I'm going to take it into Photoshop and I'm going to do a different video for that.